Um, Welcome, everybody. I hope my sound is okay today. I thank you all for being here at this, my first proper meeting of the Rotary Club. I declare the meeting open. I'd like to particularly welcome our visitors, and if I could start by welcoming our visitors from overseas. If they would make themselves known, then Clive will introduce them.
Hi. Hi, Clive.
Yes.
Yeah, from San Susan, from Philippines.
Yep. We're good to see you again.
Would you tell us how the things are with you, particularly with regard to COVID in the Philippines at the moment?
Oh, right now they're increasing. We had around 50,000 infected with COVID, and the death rate is around 1,200 in the moment. At the moment.
Are you socially distancing and doing all those other things, or are you following the American example?
Yes. Our president is very active on informing all the public.
Thank you.
In the Philippines, yeah.
Thank you. You are most welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't see anybody else. I mean, we've got Tim, of course, in Brussels. We've got Hiko in Japan. We've got Tim.
We have Rima. We have Rima Tamtash from the Rotary Club of Jordan, of Petra, Amman. I see her waving at me, Clive, on the screen.
Okay, just unmute yourself, Rima, and just talk to us.
Hi, everyone. This is Rima. I'm from Jordan. I always come to your club when I'm in London.
You do indeed.
Yeah. It's nice to see all the faces that I'm used to. It's very good. I hope you're doing well, staying safe with the COVID-19. Currently, I'm in London. In fact, I was locked down here in London because I was with my kids. But the situation of COVID in Jordan is quite well, in fact. For like a week now, we have no cases at all. Only 3 that are coming from overseas because they're doing like rescue flights for the people who are outside Jordan. So hope it will be over for everybody. It's nice to see you all.
Thank you.
Nice to see you, Rima.
Thank you. I think many of us will have fond memories of visiting your part of the world, and particularly Petra. But I know that you can't wait to get the tourists back. Anybody else, Clive?
I don't see anybody else. As I say, we have Tim Moore, of course, in Brussels, Hiko in Tokyo, Tim McAndrews in Sardinia.
Sorry, I do apologise. I just wonder, before we move on, and as we're at the beginning of the meeting, is that members may or may not know, David, that unfortunately your brother passed away last week, and I'm sure that all the members of the Rotary Club and visitors would want to extend to you our sincere condolences and to your family.
Indeed.
Thank you, Ian, for those words. Yes, it's a bit of a shock when I was going to say, and I thank Ian very much for being willing to take over as required. But things moved on more rapidly, and I think I should be okay for conducting meetings in the near future. Thank you. Could we have a comment from Japan, Shikako or Hiko, on the current state there? Because we've been hearing quite a bit about the Japanese the changes in COVID. How are things, Hiko?
As I said before, it's a bit wet. Even when it's not raining, it's 100% humidity. And it's like being in a sauna all day, 24 hours, 7 days a week. But anyway, I think it's getting better. As to Corona pandemic, past a week, we may be having a second wave particularly in Tokyo. The figure going up to triple digit, not a couple hundred, maybe 250, and people are already quite concerned. But it's nothing like when I was in London. You were talking about thousands, or in America 10,000 every day. But in Tokyo, it's still 250 to 300. But the people are getting worried, and I think the government seems to be concerned, but not taking any immediate action as to another lockdown. And I think, knowing my fellow countrymen, they start social distancing again, and hopefully the number will come down.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that report, Hiko. My next item on the agenda is to ask if there are any reports from committee chairmen. Now, I've not been briefed on any, but if any committee chair would like to make a brief report, now is the opportunity to do so.
I would.
Okay, Hugh.
Can you hear me? Yeah. The good news is that half of you have paid your subscription. The bad news is that half of you haven't paid your subscription. Now, your subscription was due on the 1st of July. May I ask those of you who are listening in who haven't paid the subscription, remember we reduced it from last year. It's a bit cheaper this year. So to save a lot of time and a lot of hassle, I would appreciate if you could pay your subscription as soon as possible, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hugh. And it's certainly true that if you're going to pay your subscription sometime, please do it now. It saves everybody a lot of concern. The next item on the agenda is visits to other clubs. Now, I know Robert Ghazi has got some visits to report. So while he's doing his report, would others care to indicate to Clive by putting a hand up that they also have? Robert, would you like to start us off?
Well, I haven't seen Robert on here this morning. I don't think he's joined us.
Okay.
I know there was going to be some problem.
Any other reports of visits?
Hi. Just to give you an ominous report, I'm really sorry to say that our former member and honorary member, Gordon Warren, is really very, very unwell. We are using some contacts to see if we can assist June, his wife, because it's really very difficult circumstances. And we are being assisted by John and Mary Buchanan, which is gratefully appreciated. I'll keep you posted, but at the moment, that's all for now.
I saw Thomas waving his hand. I don't know if he had anything. Tom.
Right. Yes, I went to a Rotary meeting, a real one, on Thursday evening, which was nice to see people. We didn't touch or kiss as they do in France, but it was a great meeting, and the president sent his best wishes to you, our new president, David.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed, Tom. We've had some more birthdays this week. In a club of our size, we would expect some birthdays every week, but I'm particularly pleased to report that we have some people present whose birthday it is this week. And would they, if the people named would care to unmute and just say hello, I'm going to go back to you, Tom, to start with. I'm not going to announce which birthday it is, but I'd like to wish you a very happy birthday and to give you a virtual pen. Now, you've seen this. The holograph will be on its way to you. And I'll look forward to that check being written with it as soon as we can, as soon as possible. Tom.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Tom. The next is Ruthian. Ruthian Jones on 13th, same day as Tom, actually. Ruthian, it's your birthday, and we'd like to wish you a happy birthday. I think we will spare singing happy birthday on this occasion because combining 50-odd voices on Zoom has proved to be quite difficult in the past. But Ruthian, would you like to say hello?
Thank you very much, and thank you for all the good wishes from fellow members of the club. It's a great privilege to reach another birthday, and I hope, if we are spared, my wife and I will reach our golden wedding anniversary in a month's time. So it's a bit of a special year.
Fantastic, fantastic. Yeah. Well, I'm sure you will be, and we look forward to being able to commend you on, congratulate you on that celebration as soon as it's confirmed.
Thank you very
Well,
much.
here is your virtual pen. It's very similar to the last one I sent, but there is a subtle difference. I won't ask you to spot it. And the other birthday is Mamdouh Barakat. I don't think Mamdouh's on the line, though, is he?
He's not, David.
The next stage is to actually commence the normal part of the Rotary special meeting, which is by toasting the Queen. So I'd ask you to find a glass and to toast the royal toast to the Queen.
The Queen.
Thank you. We now move on to about on time to introducing our speaker, and I have the privilege of introducing our speaker, and Ken Giles will give us the vote of thanks. Robin Bidgood has had a very distinguished career in catering. It's very likely that every one of our members will have benefited from eating something that he has supervised or directed the serving of at one level. For example, when he was running the Olympic, the 2012 Olympic catering, he was serving 4,000 covers, over 4,000 covers a day to people attending. He's had a very wide range of experience from hotels here in the UK and abroad, specialist dining clubs, to being a leader of a large catering conglomerate, really, a company with a lot of subsidiary interests. So he's got experience from the small to the large and of all varieties of hospitality. He's also served in those organizations at every level, starting as a waiter and ending up as a director of a substantial organization. So he has an enormous amount of experience behind him before he moved on to his current role. And he knows the hospitality industry top to bottom. I can only think that his new employers are very pleased to have him with them. He's effectively joined forces with the forces and is a commander of the Army and Navy Club of London. And he's going to talk to us on the history, the present and the future of a prestigious London private members club. Thank you, Robin, and over to you.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you very much for that introduction, and it's a pleasure to be able to join you all today. Sorry, it is over Zoom and not in person in London, but it's an honour to be with you. I am, as indicated, the CEO of the Army and Navy Club in Pall Mall, number 36 Pall Mall. Right on the corner opposite the RAC Club, for those of you that might know London, opposite there, and as you walk up into St James's Square. The club has the Queen as its patron, and goes back to its founding year of 1837. And originally, at that particular time, it was to be known as the Army Club, not the Army and Navy, simply the Army Club. But the Duke of Wellington, who was the commander-in-chief at that time, said that he would have nothing to do with the club unless it involved his counterparts from the Navy. So the club came to be and was founded in that year of 1837, and the Duke of Wellington was its first patron. It was formed as a sort of part of what was going on in London at that time, with many sort of other successful service clubs. The services were at that particular time large in their number, with many men going through to serve, and the club was successful for those initial years, and so much so that in 1847 it was decided that they needed to have somewhere of their own, and move out of the rented accommodation that they'd taken on initially in the northern part of St James's Square. So they bought 5 houses where the clubhouse currently sits now. They knocked down those 5 houses and built the original clubhouse, which was opened in 1851. The club went from that point to being even more successful. The club was very large as a building and had a good number of members. And there are other clubs that formed subsequently because at that point the club had as many members as it could actually deal with and to take. So the club went through all the way through until about 1958, successfully post the Second World War. And in 1958, post the war and with the number of members and with the changes in society at that time, the then chairman was a gentleman called Sir Ian Jacob. And he recognised that the clubhouse, as it was in its guise at that particular time, was not really fit for purpose for the sort of changes in lifestyle and for the future generations. The club had few sort of very large public rooms. What it didn't have were sort of smaller, more appropriate rooms for meeting, and it certainly didn't have very much accommodation for members to be able to stay in London as part of the way that life was led at that particular time for a night or two. So the club underwent a second transformation, and they knocked down the old original building, which to many was a shame, but absolutely essential if it was going to be a suitable clubhouse for the members, not just then, but in the coming decades. So the club reopened after about 5 years, opened again in 1963, and the building that is there now is what was built at that particular point. We have 76 bedrooms. It's a bit like a small hotel. All of the bedrooms are now en suite, which is great in this current environment with the COVID virus, because you are not allowed to open a bedroom without en-suite facilities. So my counterpart at the Victory Services Club, which some of you may know up in Marble Arch, they have more rooms than we do. They're up at sort of 216 bedrooms, but they have 40, 45 or so bedrooms that they can't sell or rent out at the moment for the night because they are not en suite. They have the sort of old-fashioned toilet down the corridor, and that's not permissible currently. But as well as the 76 bedrooms, we have the dining room, or the coffee room, as members to Clubland will probably know it as. The room has many of the original paintings from when the first clubhouse back in '63 and beyond that, earlier than that, was formed. Some of the original wood panelling was saved when the club was knocked down, put into storage, and was then used to line the walls of the dining room now. About 7 or 8 years ago, the club embarked on a bit of a refurbishment program, again in response to the changing times, and created what is now called the Ribbon Bar and Terrace on the 3rd floor. 3 or 4 bedrooms were converted, and what we now have is a very nice external terrace, which is great for this time of year. Again, great for the sort of virus situation at the moment, because it's an area where people can sit outside and feel quite comfortable. And it's a sort of antidote to the more formal side of the dining room. So the dining room requires a bit more formality when it comes to dress, whereas if you go to the Ribbon Bar, it's a little less formal, more relaxed, open slightly different hours, tables are not bookable, members can just sort of turn up, have a drink, have something to eat all day. And in addition to that, we have several private rooms that, when we're not in virus, we do well from, in terms of dinners and lunches and family affairs, weddings, that type of thing. And the largest room we have, the Pall Mall, we are capable of doing events of up to 120 from a sit-down perspective. And I sincerely hope it isn't too much longer before we're able to return to do that type of event. At the moment, with the virus, our event capacities are limited to 6 because of the whole situation with regards to households and everything. So that is quite a challenge for us in terms of the sort of financial aspect to running the club under the current restrictions. The club has a nickname, and it's known as the Rag, and which is often sort of used and referred to by many of the members with great affection. it goes all the way back to not that long after the club was formed in the early 1840s. And it was given the name, or the name became acquired as a result of one of the then members, who I'm told wasn't a particularly distinguished soldier, and rather liked the nightlife to London a little too much, and returned to the club one evening quite late, around midnight, and was not particularly happy with the dinner that he was served at that particular time. And so he described what he'd been given as a rag and famish affair, which was meant as an insult, because at the time the Rag and Famish Club was a rather on its knees gambling den in London that was not somewhere where army officers really should be frequenting at that time of night. And so the insult was given, but to the members it was rather amusing, and they adopted the name, and the name became simply the Rag not long after, and has remained as the nickname to the club ever since. Currently today we have about 5,000 members. There are sort of even, well, not quite even now, it's more sort of 60-40 split in terms of those members that are military and those that are non-military. Needless to say, in recent times, sort of since the sort of 50s, the number of people in the British forces has declined, and with that has been the number of people that the club has been able to attract. And equally, as time's gone on, people who were original members have sort of died. So some years back, the club recognised what it needed to do was to open its doors to non-members, of non-military background, I should say. And so that split is now about 60-40. I think the club over the next 5-10 years is going to have a challenge keeping it at that kind of ratio, because the services are ever declining, and the competition to be, part of a club in London is more and more fierce these days. But the club has evolved, and it's been at the sort of forefront in many respects over the years. It was one of the first all-male clubs to permit women, and not just as guests, but as members in their own right. And obviously that was a reflection of the time when the forces changed and allowed women to be part of the services and to be active alongside their male counterparts. So we're quite proud of the fact that the club has that as part of its sort of heritage, and equally as part of its ethos now. The articles to the club were changed last year, so that those that were there as partners or associate members were capable of becoming members in their own right and having the right to vote, and that all now is the case. And with that evolution over time, things like the dress code and what have you have naturally had to be sort of relaxed a little to become a little less formal. Although there are occasions within the year, with the club dinner and others, when there is an opportunity to sort of dress up for the full military dress, which is pretty special to see. How would I describe the club now? I think it's a traditional club. It has that military ethos and background. We're very much focused around service. And I guess the principle is really about trying to provide something that is a home from home. We have members who, whilst they may have now retired from active service, very much are part of the MOD or the civil service and come and stay with us 2 or 3 nights a week. And so for us, it's important that we have that little black book that recognises the sort of pillow that they like, which room they like to stay in, any particular sort of quirks and idiosyncrasies they have as part of their stay. And that's, I guess, how we're able to sort of make the club special to them and feel like home. Other aspects that we try to do are reach out to our reciprocal partners around the world. We have over 80 clubs around the world: Asia, America, Australia, absolutely everywhere, South Africa. And those clubs we have arrangements with whereby our members may go and stay there, and their members may come and stay with us when they're in London. And that works well for us. Not, of course, at the moment, or have been in recent times because of quarantine, but I think it does help keep the club and its connections and that global feel alive, and we as a club benefit from having that interaction with them and being able to sort of share experiences. And certainly myself and my counterparts, not just in London but around the world, have sort of been talking to each other about what's happening at the moment, how we're dealing with it, how members have sort of reacted, and what works in terms of bringing the club back up. Because certainly in other parts of the world, being able to bring the club or bring a club back up and open has probably happened a good 4 to 6 weeks in advance of us. So that's been very helpful. Anybody who's been into one of London's sort of clubs, whether it's the RAC, whether it's us, whether it's the Oxford and Cambridge or Cavalry Guards, each of the clubs has its own sort of little, as I said earlier, idiosyncrasies and quirks, and part of that sort of heritage piece. And I think that's what makes them special. The one thing that is common to us all as a definition, as a legal definition of a club, is that we are all licensed differently to a normal public house or a bar or a restaurant. And as a club, we have a club license. And it means the drink that we buy, the alcohol that we buy, has to be bought or has to be signed off by a member, because the basic principle is a member is buying drink for fellow members and their guests. And so we don't sort of profit in the same way. Everything that we do doesn't go back to the shareholders. It goes back into the running of the club and the upkeep for future generations. And the one thing that all of us as club secretary or a CEO or a club is allowed to do on the basis of being a club license holder is a rarity, and that is to be able to refuse permission to a police officer into our premises. We do not have to let a police officer in if we don't want to. We can choose to, but we don't have to. And there is only one condition under which we are legally obliged to, and that is if we believe, they believe, the premises is harbouring a felon. But other than that, police can knock on the front door, but we don't have to let them in. And that's one of the sort of rare things to a London club, amongst many. So that's a very sort of brief. I'm obviously conscious of time, and I hope I've kept to the brief piece. But absolutely, thank you for the invitation and the opportunity. I hope that was informative, and I'm very happy to take any questions anybody would like to know about the Army and Navy Club or clubs more broadly, or even hospitality.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Robin. Certainly, I think your talk gives rise to more questions than we probably have time for. And I don't know who'd like to start those questions, but I would be grateful for your general assessment on the impact of COVID on the London hospitality scene. You've seen many aspects of hospitality. And I'm very concerned that there will be many organizations fail because they don't have the resources to continue. I mean, this including livery halls and clubs, because the income generated from that space is so critical to its continuity.
Oh, I think that's a very fair assessment. I think, the government and many have recognised just how difficult this has been for hospitality. By its sheer definition and what we do, we are all about social engagement. We are about people coming out to enjoy themselves and enjoying hospitality. And of course, that's been denied for well over 100 days. London is far from getting back on its feet. London is very quiet. For those of us that work in the capital, I've lived and worked in London for over 30 years, and I've never seen London as quiet for a long period of time like this. And I think it's going to take a long time for people to get that confidence back, to feel good about sitting in an enclosed space, restaurant, bar, whatever it may be, and enjoying themselves again. And that's why we haven't opened up all of our facilities. We kept the dining room closed because I simply don't have the footfall at the moment to warrant everything being open. I have the third floor bar and terrace open because this time of year we can throw the doors open, people can sit outside, and people feel a bit more comfortable about being in that environment. But we've had to make a lot of effort and time and expense actually into making the club what we would say would be a safe stay. Whether that's signage, whether it's changes to the bedrooms, whether it's technology for people to be able to order food and drink through an app, and all the things that the guidance is kind of demanding. I think we're a long way off being back to where we were before. I think people's habits will stay different for quite a while. And we've had to adapt. We've had to do a lot more Zoom with our members. We've had to do Friday evening cheers with our members, with our barman making cocktails, and the members sat at home making cocktails at the same time and having engagement. We've done book clubs, we've done choir, we've done wine tastings, and I know that, you know, my peers in Clubland have all done very, very similar things. So it is a concern. There will be a lot of restaurants that won't reopen. You know, the challenge in somewhere like London, anywhere with hospitality works on very thin margins. Most hospitality businesses don't make anything more than 7, 8, 9% net profit. And when you've got that much of a wafer thin margin, even at good times when you've got high numbers of people coming to enjoy what it is that you do, you know, by the time you throw in rent, food inflation has started to kick in for us as a sort of result of the virus now. And, you know, it's going to be a real squeeze. The only thing that will make life a little bit easier is our labour market, because unfortunately a lot of people are being laid off and people being made redundant. I'm no exception. I'm having to go through redundancy conversations at the moment with some of my team, unfortunately, within the catering side, particularly around the events, because I don't think I'm going to be doing anything serious from a catering or an event perspective until 2021. So yeah, it's a real shame. You know, government measures like the relief to business rates and availability of loans and other bits, they've all helped, and they've all helped keep many companies and institutions alive. And you mentioned livery halls there. I, in a previous life, used to run 5 or 6 livery halls and stationers and goldsmiths and other bits. And you're absolutely right. That secondary income from event space revenue and room hire and everything is massively important to those institutions. So yeah, tough times ahead, I think, for a while.
Thank you. Now, Barsi has raised her hand, so I'm going to unmute Barsi and invite her to ask her question. Barsi, would you like to ask your question, please?
Yes. Thank you very much for the interesting talk and the history of the Army and Navy Club. My question is, can membership be handed down if a member is deceased to the spouse, or do they have to start membership all over again?
It isn't handed down in the truest sense. What we do is we provide a widower's membership opportunity. Quite often people will have been there as the sort of second, if you like, on the membership. But with all of the club articles changing last year to make it far more equal, you know, as I said, many of those associates and spouses are now members and have the same voting rights and the members in their own right. But there has historically been the case that if the principal lead member has been the man, and then the wife at the point of deceasing has been offered the sort of a deceased widow's rate from a membership point of view, which has been great because we have a lot of people who have remained members for many years, and as I said, members in their own right now, and that connection to the club and something they've been associated with a long time remains. We have over 250 members who have honorary membership. They are honorary members because they've been a member of the club for 50 years or more. So we have quite a few people who go back and know the club for a very long time and are close to it.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Can I ask if anybody else has a question, can you please use the reactions button to raise your hand, because that will bring you to the top of the list and it'll be easy to find you.
Sorry, can I ask a question, Clive?
Okay, Nahid, yes.
Yes, thank you very much. 2 questions. Is it when you said the police, you won't have to let police in, is it for investigation or is it for just coming in, having lunch? And the other question is, my husband is now retired. He was a captain, master mariner, and he was working all his life on the rig and ships, and would he be able to join the club?
Okay, to answer the first question, no, it's purely about a very old-fashioned law about the way that clubs had their own sort of sanctity and almost elitism, I guess, where as a private members club, you were almost above the law in some respects. And it's just one of those little quirks that's never changed over time. So if a police officer knocks on the door and says, please, may I go to your toilet? You know, you are not obliged to say yes. And they have to provide a very good reason for them to want to come into the premises. Even if there's been a complaint around noise and other bits like that, you're not in that situation in the same way that you would be if you ran a bar or a pub. To answer your second question, the normal situation is anybody who has been commissioned from initially the British services, but then there is the inevitable association with other parts of the world through the service that's taken place for the British military. So there are some basic criteria, but anybody who has held a commission is eligible to become a military member of the club. But as I said, you don't have to be have been of military origin to become a member. It's a process, anybody can apply. There are proposing and seconding requirements, and then it goes in front of the membership committee to decide, possibly through interview, whether that person becomes a member or not.
Thank you very much.
Clive, I have a question. A lot of younger people, Robin, don't seem to be very keen on joining clubs these days. What are you doing to attract younger people, and why should younger people of a non-military background want to join your club?
That's the crux of our issue at the moment. I guess it's that thing of a sense of belonging has changed, and everything is a little more sort of fast-paced material, and understandably people will vote with their feet if something isn't right. And I think, as I mentioned, Clubland is highly competitive. You've got things like Soho House Group and Home House and everything now, which is lifestyle clubs, contemporary clubs that the younger generation look for and want to be part of. There are some people who shy away from something like that. And there are those who feel that something that is perhaps a bit more discreet, a bit more sort of, I guess that thing, as I mentioned earlier, around tradition and that sort of ethos and the sort of respectful environment where you can go and do business and talk to people and get away from it a little bit. You know, Soho House and other places like that are very much sort of dedicated towards the sort of art and other side of things, and can be, for some, a bit noisy and not particularly discreet. Whereas our clubhouse has those spaces, it has those rooms where people can go and sit and enjoy something that's perhaps a little less fast-paced. But it's a key question for us at the moment in terms of what is our club going to be for the next 10 years, or even in 10 years' time. You know, I think it does have to be around that service piece, because there are still people who very much enjoy the fact that they can go somewhere, be known, be recognised, have somebody remember how they like their cocktail, or all of those things that just makes people feel a bit special. And sometimes hotels and restaurants and things can be a bit soulless. They can be a bit transactionary. Whereas my members will arrive at the front door, they'll be greeted by a porter, one of whom has been there for 29 years. So the chances are he's going to remember you as a member and everything else. You'll go through to the bar, you'll meet Paul, our barman, who's got an amazing memory for the cocktail and how people like it, things on reception and what have you. So I think for us, it's about that little bit more. It's that little thing about something special and going back to the principle from home. And my hope is that after all of what's gone on in recent times, people will identify with that and find something as a sort of safe haven, a safe space where they know that we're working incredibly hard to provide something that keeps people as safe as they possibly can.
Do you have a particularly new strategy or new plan for getting in younger people?
Well, I've only been with the club for 12 months. I celebrate my first year with the club on the 1st of August. And to be honest, it was part of what I was brought in for, as part of the sort of hospitality background and the things I've done in the past, that it's very much about how do we keep the club relevant? How do we make it more relevant to that younger generation? Because I've got I've got over 25% of my membership who are 80 or over. So in the next 5 years, it stands to reason that I'm going to, you know, through natural causes, lose a very large proportion of my membership. So part of this is very much about that strategic direction for the club in terms of what we offer, what we do, what we provide. And, you know, take Zoom. Who'd heard of Zoom 6 months ago? You know, we didn't do any virtual events. Everything that we did, we hosted in the clubhouse, and we expected people to come to us. The last 3 or 4 months has changed all of that. So, you know, we've got to be fleet of foot. We've got to be thinking about what we're doing, how we do it, how we stay relevant, competitive, and how we not only retain the members that we've got, but how do we make sure that, as you rightly point out, we're attractive to that younger generation.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, Vadian.
Thank you very much for that. One of the things that interests me about the future of clubs with bedroom opportunities is that there has been, as a result of COVID, an explosion in people looking for property outside the main urban centres on the basis that they can work online. It follows that if you have the need for some time in urban centres such as London, there's going to be more of an opportunity for clubs, it seems to me, because it's more congenial to spend 2 nights in a club than it is in the anonymity of a hotel. So I wondered if actually this would work in your favour in some ways.
That's what I'm hoping. And I think that is certainly true for members who do need to travel into London. You know, the sense that I'm getting from my membership at the moment is that we're still very early days. You know, we've only been open 10 days, and we've only been allowed to be open 10 days. We stayed open to the MOD and some of their key workers all the way through the closure and through lockdown. We had army officers who were staying with us as part of the effort that was going on at Whitehall and with the Cabinet Office and the Cobra team and things. But I think you're right, and that's very much the strategy for us in terms of the reciprocals I mentioned from coming overseas. If you are having to come to London for business or to travel, come and stay somewhere which is safe and protected in the centre. We are blessed with a car park, which is quite unusual in central London underneath the club. So we have about 24 parking spaces. So again, what we're able to do is say to people, avoid your public transport, drive in, come into the basement, come up into the clubhouse, and then you can do everything you need to in complete safety for 2 or 3 days. So I think for me, I'm looking to September. I think August is going to be a write-off because now that quarantine is over, people are thinking, I'm going to get on an aeroplane or I'm going to jump on the Eurostar or whatever and we'll go on a UK holiday. Because I think everyone's pretty fed up with you know, being at home, and I understand that. And why would people come to central London in August? For me, with the changes to the furlough rules and the fact that employers are having to start bringing people back into employment and offices having to start to get going again, September is the month that, fingers crossed, and there's no second wave and all those things, then we will start to motor again, I'm hoping.
Thank you. I have had the pleasure of lunching on your balcony on a nice sunny day, and I can testify that the food was excellent and the atmosphere was great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Margaret Cooper, you wish to ask a question.
Thank you very much, Clive. My question is still on hospitality. There's a buzz in town that restaurants and hotels will have to charge deposit for anybody who books. And what do you think of that?
Well, it's highly topical because there's a quite a well-known chef, Tom Kerridge, who I'm sure many of you know from TV and from the restaurants he's got, and he was very vocal today within the trade, within the hospitality trade, about the number of people who didn't show up to his restaurants over the weekend when he reopened. And you know, he quoted, I think it was 27, 28 customers who had booked who simply didn't turn up. And I think sadly we are coming closer. Maybe not so much for the club, because I have members with numbers and I know where I can get hold of people. for them to be coming to stay with us. But hospitality more broadly, sadly, I think is going to have to move to that stage, because, you know, if I think about some of the restaurants that I've run and things in the past and bars and what have you, the capacity is reduced because of social distancing as it is at the moment. So if you have a 100 cover restaurant, you are only really now in a position to be able to do about 60 covers. So that's quite a drop. And if you out of those 60, you get, even if you've got 10, 15% who don't turn up, going back to my point earlier about the sort of wafer thin margins that people work on, you're into unprofitable territory. So I think that sort of common decency of people who do book, you know, just turning up and being part of it, or at least letting people know, I think we're moving closer and closer to that point where people are going to have to be able to sort of charge that deposit and make that commitment, because financially it's incredibly tough for restaurants, bars and everything to turn a profit at the moment.
Thank you.
Yeah, Clisman, you want to ask?
Thank you. Wonderful. This comes off of the back of this question of how do you attract the younger people to the club, Robin? And if I may suggest something, I think something that you may find interesting, I think when it comes time to attract the young people, being a young person myself, sort of being 29 and involved in security and defense side of the world, I think a good place to start would be attracting them whilst they're young, i.e. even going into universities and being a place where you could, because you have some very notable people as part of your club. So there's two ways in which I think young people would love to be part of an experience like this. One would be facilitating events, where you have some of your members speak about their experience of different aspects of their work and life, as well as providing mentorship for the younger people coming into the club, having them experience the club once or twice, maybe even having some free events where they can meet some of your existing members, those who share a passion and interest in security, defense, and world affairs, is where you start with that, and creating conversations as to why it would be beneficial being surrounded by these more experienced people, so they can guide them along their path through their career and also through their social circles. It'd be a great place to begin. I mean, yes, I actually helped a members club, which is now closed, unfortunately, the Green Room, which is an actors club. When it was alive, it was there since the 1800s, where Monet painted one of his famous paintings, actually. I had to attract a lot of the young artistic drum students from RADA and from Lambda and the sort, and it worked very well with them, where they had a chance to meet and greet existing actors, producers, directors, and have a place where you can convene conversations of topical issues in your clubs via Zoom even, or when things start to open up again, face to face. I think you have think tanks which do that very well, but having this as a club feature would be an excellent thing. And if you'd like me to perhaps to give you some more insights, we can continue the conversation afterwards as well.
That's really kind, thank you. And it's very much part of the focus that we have for our collateral material going out in September. You know, the last 3 or 4 months of being closed has been very focused on the operational and what we need to do, the financial and the other bits. I appointed a new membership secretary who comes from the hotel PR background and is very much used to that sort of younger generation, younger audience, and the type of hotel that you're referring to. And a key part of me changing the team that I've inherited and moving it on is because where the club was before, it was very sort of focused on what it's always done. And it can't survive by doing what it's always done. We've got to do that much more.
Exactly.
That's why the club articles changed. That's why my membership completely changed. My management team, I beg your pardon. You know, and so the people that I've been bringing in over the last sort of 6-9 months are very much lined up and to regenerate the club and have that sort of focus on the piece and the type of event that you're describing there. So no, an opportunity to talk further would be great. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful.
Thank you.
I don't know whether could I just interject there, Clive,
yeah.
very quickly. I mean, we need places for Rotary to meet. They're a young group and they need somewhere to meet. And perhaps bringing some young groups into the club might be the same as Clisman's suggestion.
Absolutely, and you know, we in recent months before we were able to, we're working with some younger organisations, some from a charitable perspective, and some of them obviously tied back to the military in bits. But part of all of that was designed to do exactly that and sort of revisit some of our potential future members. There's always been a strong connection down to Sandhurst and the obvious sort of pull and the attraction through the military. But the new membership secretary that I brought in, as I said, is very much sort of focused and designed to be part of what we will have to do as part of that working differently in the future. At the moment, you know, we're not allowed to host an event, but you know, fingers crossed that comes back quite soon, because then the intention is very much about doing exactly what you just described.
I'm now going to call on Paul Wilson.
Thank you, Clive. Can I just ask, do you have smaller dining rooms where you can host, let's say, private parties of 20 or 30? And if you do, does at least one of those people have to be a member of the club?
We do. We have a variety of rooms. So I have a room that can go from hosting 14, 16 all the way up to 120. So with every sort of denomination in between. So yes, there are different rooms for exactly that purpose. Members need to sponsor. So it is possible for a non-member to come and have an event, but the event needs to be sponsored by a member. So I did an event not long before lockdown, actually, that involved the brother of a member. He himself was not a member of the club. His brother, who was prepared to sort of sponsor that particular event. It was a family affair, and they all came along and enjoyed themselves very much. But yeah, absolutely, we can support events in that way.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Anthony, if you'd like to unmute yourself and ask a question.
Thank you very much. Robin, just occurred to me, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah,
do members of your club have to be individuals, or can they also be organisations or other clubs? For example, Rotary or Rotary Club of London.
Yeah, and again, at this present time, the membership has always been based on the individual. It's historically been based on spouse. We have a family package. Out of necessity at this moment in time, we are considering the principle of corporate and that thing of an organisation, and what does that look like, and what can it offer? You know, it is absolutely as a result of times are changing, because we recognise that what was the normal is the new normal. Isn't there? Two very different things. And funnily enough, we had a board meeting and a membership committee meeting within the last 2 weeks by Zoom. And part of that was all about what are our membership categories and what are we going to offer going to be for the next year. We have to go out to the membership in September about our subscriptions for next year, and what that looks like. And at the same time, the intention is to go out to the members and the principle of the work being done behind the scenes around organisations. And even if they don't become a member in the truest sense, there's an opportunity for some of the facilities to be available to them for hire. Is it the meeting space? Is it the the business centre, etc., etc.? So very much on the table at the moment. Very much so.
Thank you.
Christopher, would you like to unmute yourself?
Yes. Can you hear me?
We can.
Yeah.
We live on the south bank of the Thames. Around us, within a stone's throw, are no fewer than 5 hotels and about as many pubs. All of them have had zero income for the last 3 months. And as at this moment, as I look at Blackfriars Bridge, I cannot see a single vehicle on it, which is a measure of how quiet London has become. I'm wondering what proportion of these 5 hotels are going to survive this extraordinary experience?
Yeah, I think that's a very fair question at the moment. And I guess a lot of it depends on how they're financed and what their foundations are. You know, the same is true of clubland, the same is true of restaurants. All of the sort of quarterly rents have started to kick in the last week, 10 days. You know, to give you an idea, our business, we're fortunate we own the freehold to our building, but other clubs don't. And so there is that inevitability of discussions with landlord and things. You know, I have many challenges in running the club. One I don't have to worry about in the same way is the fact that we own the freehold. So that's great. But the business rates holiday finishes in March 21. From April 2021, I will have to start paying business rates again. Now, for my building in the centre of London, given what I have, 76 bedrooms, all of those bits, that means I'm going to have to find £600,000 next year for business rates alone, just for the business rates. And at the same time, I'm going to have to, you know, start paying the VAT bills again and all those other things that the government have done to help support businesses. I think we're probably 3 or 4 months behind what will be the real lag, the real identification as to what will survive and what won't. I have a friend of mine who I trained with at the Savoy 30 odd years ago, and we've been friends all this time. And he's currently the managing director of McDonald Hotels in the UK. And he looks after 22 hotels from sort of the Midlands down to the South Coast. His counterpart does North and Scotland. He's got 22 hotels. He's got 2,700 staff, and he's currently talking to 1,800 of them about redundancy. And of that portfolio of 22 hotels, he thinks at least 6 will never reopen, or at least not in the next 6 to 12 months. So, you know, one of them is on the edge of Southampton in the New Forest. It's built entirely around Cunard and all of the cruises that go out to Southampton. All the people come down, stay the night before, leave the car at the house, get shuttled onto the Cunard, go for 2 weeks, 3 weeks cruises, come back, pick the car up, stay another night, whatever it may be. He's not opening that hotel anytime soon because Cunard aren't sailing anything until late October, beginning of November at the earliest. So, I think it's going to be at least 2 to 3 months, and for me, September is the key, because if I don't start seeing that membership and the reciprocal sort of getting interested about booking bedrooms, coming into London, coming back to do the things that I'm set up to do, and like many hospitality businesses, we're going to have some very, very tough calls to make. But that's true of so many businesses, and sad to say.
Thank you very much.
I have a question, in fact, if I may. Can I?
Yeah. Yes.
What I was thinking, this COVID-19 pandemic has really made a change in the behavioral patterns of people all around the world, and that includes their way of expenditure, even when it comes to hospitality, when they want to have a good time. So we are really at times that are uncertain because we don't really know the change. How would that really affect the hospitality industry in specific?
I think it's about, I was sent an article by my vice chairman at the club by an organisation, McKinsey, so I'm sure many people will know, who American organisation who write on business and things. And the article they wrote was entitled "From the Room Called Fear to the Room Called Hope." And what it was talking about was the very basic principle of how do we change a large number of people's behaviours who have been told, rightly, to behave in a particular way for a period of time in order to safeguard themselves and those around them and the nation more broadly. And when you take people on a journey like that over that particular period, and where messaging is as strong as it is about stay safe and all the other things, it's incredibly difficult to take people back out the other side and convince them it's the right thing to do. And it's not particularly helped when, you know, you get some mixed messages. Yesterday wasn't a great day in terms of, you know, the clarity around the government to do with face masks. Early in the day, you get told you will need to wear a face mask if you go to a shop or somewhere similar. Later in the day, you get told that that's not necessarily the case. So I think the clarity of messaging, the confidence, all of those things are the key part to what has to happen pretty quickly, to be honest, if we're not going to end up in a very, very tough place in a few months' time. Organisations are already deciding the right thing to do is make some job losses. I'm having to go through redundancy conversations because I know that if I do that now, my hope is that I will have to do less further down the line. So the behavioural piece and attitude piece is one of confidence and the fact that people feel that the risk is a risk worth taking, or it's a risk that is going to carry a relatively low probability of something going wrong. And that's why the messaging is important. That's why the sort of principle of what a restaurant can do and what it offers and the environment that it provides. And that's why we focus so much on the environment being a safe environment with some clear communications about what we're doing and why, in the hope that members feel good about it. You know, I've had some members who've returned. I was talking to a member there at the club on Thursday, and he said, listen, I feel perfectly safe here. He said, what you've done and what the team have done and what create when I walk through the door, I feel very, very safe. He said, I have confidence coming here. But equally, you know, that morning I'd taken a phone call from one of my regular members who said, I just don't feel ready to do it yet. I don't feel ready to get on the train up to Waterloo and come to the club and sit and have lunch. So different people, different perspectives, but something's going to have to kickstart, you know, the whole change of attitude quite soon, I think.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sergeant of Arms Clive. And thank you very much indeed, Robin. You've given us a lot to think about. It's somber in some ways, but I am encouraged by your optimism. We certainly will be looking to start meeting again physically in September, if we possibly can. We'll be looking at hybrid solutions and so on. But I'd like now to call on Ken Giles, to propose the formal vote of thanks to you, Robin, for that extremely interesting and thought-provoking talk.
Right, okay, thank you. Robin, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Thank you very much for that talk. I mean, you've covered so much ground. And I mean, the fact that you've only been there a year and you've been faced with what is a major crisis, I mean, I think we'll all take our hats off to you for that one. I actually did want to ask a question, and it's too late probably for you to answer it, but I wanted to ask about business use of the premises, because I do notice companies sometimes use the premises for meetings, and there's that magnificent business suite. But perhaps don't spend time answering that now, because what I want to do was to thank you for covering so much, and for me and for my wife, who are both members. We keep learning new things about the club, and it's so good to see tradition evolving so that it takes account of the fact we're now in the 21st century. So I would like to propose a vote of thanks for you for such an excellent speech, and I think the number of questions that came to you would actually show how much people are interested. So I would like to ask members, first of all, to show their usual appreciation.
Pleasure.
Thank you, Clive. That brings me just to one other matter for business, which is our charitable activity. Firstly, I'd like to read a letter we've received from a charity we supported quite recently, called Brainwave. And this is the response from Nick Evans of Brainwave. Dear Mr. Kirk, you're helping children with disabilities achieve greater independence. On behalf of everyone at Brainwave, both our team and the families we engage with would like to thank the Rotary Club of London for your generous donation of £2,500. Your vital support enables our team of qualified therapists and specialists to help even more children with disabilities reach their potential. Thank you. Thanks to you, we can help children who we started seeing in 2016. He then gives an example which demonstrates the importance of their service to parents of a particular girl called Rosie. Thank you for making a difference to the lives of the many children and families that we have the privilege to work with, and for forming part of their Brainwave journey. We're delighted to have you with us and look forward to keeping you updated on our work in the future. And that is my introduction, my request, if you like, that we maintain the support we've been giving our charitable fund to help children and the supporters of children in need and in suffering, and to ask you if you would consider making a contribution to our charitable fund through Hugh Kirk, the treasurer, by a cheque or the bank transfer, bearing in mind that in Zoom meetings we're not incurring the costs that the institutions like Robert so need of buying lunch, travelling to the venue, and so on. And Tim used to give a number of about £50 for that. So even a percentage of that, if you could provide a percentage of that to the charitable fund, it will be spent on your behalf for very, very needy causes. Thank you for that. I'd now like to call on Hugh Kirk to give a brief introduction to next week's speaker.
Our speaker next week is John Gaffer. He is a retired barrister. He practiced as a barrister, but he chose to be a solicitor. It's usually the other way around about. His subject is going to be quite fascinating. He's going to be talking about from the Soho clubs to the House of Lords. And he's going to be attired in the robes of a judge and the wig of a judge. His talk is going to be quite fascinating, so make sure you tune in next week. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Hugh, and I hope all of you online will do that. I now like just to offer the final toast, and I'd ask everyone to gather a glass and be prepared to give our traditional toast, Rotary and peace the world over. Rotary and peace the world over.
Sorry, Sir Mark.
World over.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.